Okay, welcome to the committee training for PAC 136. This video is the first in a series of videos intended to help with the succession of the leadership in the PAC. And the reason for this is, in addition to fulfilling a wood badge ticket, this particular series of videos is meant to solve a problem that I encountered when I first joined the PAC with my son 5 years ago. The year that we joined was a rebuilding year for the PAC in terms of membership as well as leadership. At the time that we came on, there were maybe only 4 or 5 overall veteran leaders for the entire PAC, and that's counting den leaders, the Cub Master. There was no assistant Cub Master at the time. The committee was basically non-existent. So we lost a lot of the mentorship that the previous leaders could have imparted to us, the new leaders. We lost a lot of the lore. We lost a lot of the traditions. So in effort to try to preserve some of that and also do some kind of tutorial or continuing training for those who will follow us, these series of videos are meant to serve as that kind of progression of leadership. Now, of course, the BSA has its own official videos on how to do all of this stuff, and they should definitely be watched in your first month as a leader or whatever position you're in. You definitely don't want to let that sit. You don't want to leave that to last, because these videos and the manuals that they have for Cub Masters, Assistant Cub Masters, committee members, den leaders, all of these are really good resources, and you should start with them. This video is not meant to replace those. This video is a supplementary to those kinds of trainings. If you are going to be the Cub Master or committee chair for PAC 136 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, out of St. George, then what this video is meant to do is sort of restate some of that, but also give a heads up about how we do things in our PAC, what our planning calendar looks like, who handles what, how things have been done, or how things could be done in the future as an improvement. So this is meant for those who are coming onto the committee, who might be taking on new roles, who might be overall new to the PAC. I found myself on the committee and helping with leadership within a few weeks of joining with my son in first grade. So time spent in the unit is not a requirement. This is for anyone who wants to help run the PAC. So let's get going. Again, this is meant to be a supplementary committee training for those who will be serving on the committee. So first, if you're new to scouting in general, especially Cub Scouting, you may be a little confused as to how the PAC is organized. Who is the leader? Who's the overall person? Who do you go to with a particular problem? Obviously, the Cub Master is the face of the PAC, as also one of the what is called Key 3 leadership, which is composed of the committee chairman, the chartered organization representative, and the Cub Master, and we'll get into all of those. But they are the ones who are the face of the unit. They are the unit leader. So everything that a typical unit leader does in a BSA group is the role of the Cub Master. But the Cub Master is not responsible for everything. So we want to make sure we delineate who is responsible for what and how we've been running things in effort to help the next leadership come on. So this is kind of a simplified, slightly older organizational chart that our PAC tends to follow. Our chartered organization is St. George Catholic Church on Segan Lane in Baton Rouge. This Catholic Church oversees several BSA units. They oversee a boys troop, Troop 136, which is a legacy unit. It's been in operation for several decades, as well as a girls troop, which is only a few years old. That's Troop 1136. The Cub Scout unit, PAC 136, has been in operation since 1965, is also a legacy unit. We also had a venturing crew, which lost its leadership, so it's currently on hiatus, but hopefully we'll get Crew 136 back up and going again soon. And of course, they also oversee Girl Scout units, youth organization units. So it's a pretty active chartered organization that oversees these activity groups for children. So we answer to St. George, how they want us to run these units within the purvey of the BSA is how we do it. As a liaison between the scouting units and the chartered organization is the chartered organization representative, which is currently Michael Nolan. I believe he is in the process of training someone to take over. Mr. Nolan has been at it for nobody really knows how long, but quite a long time. So he has a wealth of information and relationships between everyone in St. George, the Estruma Council, and the scouting units. If there's an issue with using meeting space provided by the chartered organization, which for us is the Scout House that the church owns, a small residential house just off campus that we use for scouting activities, and the Girl Scouts use it as well. If there's an issue with scheduling that, we typically go to Mr. Nolan or whoever his replacement will be. Under that is the PAC committee. The PAC committee is appointed by the chartered organization. The committee chairman has to be approved by the pastor, at the moment Father Yee, in order to oversee the functioning of the PAC. And this is also the case with the troop, who has their own committee, as well as the crew. So the PAC committee is made up of volunteers. It's all volunteers. Nobody's getting paid for this, who help plan out and run the PAC. Obviously, the Cub Master is part of that, as is the committee chairman, whose role it is to oversee and run the committee meetings once a month. Parents are welcome to this. Den leaders should be attending, because this is usually what is decided at these PAC committees affects their dens. This is also the meeting of the treasurer, the secretary, the advancement chair, fundraising chair, derby coordinators for the Pinewood Derby and the Ring Gutter Regatta. All of these meet together to make sure that whatever activities need to be happening to ensure that the PAC is running the way it should are happening in a timely fashion. The early part of the scouting year, which is August, September, and October, this is usually when the fundraising is up and going, the popcorn sale is going. So the committee wants to make sure that the popcorn kernel has everything they need, that everything's going smoothly, finding ways to help if we can. So this is the organizational arm of the PAC. Reporting directly to the PAC committee is the PAC trainer, or the adult trainer. This is the person who works in conjunction with the Cub Master and the committee chair to make sure that everyone has the proper training that they need to do their roles. Everything in the PAC and committee is volunteer, so we need to definitely remember that. The den leaders are volunteer, but it is up to us as the committee to make sure they have the training that they need. Once again, the BSA provides everything you could possibly need, and theoretically you could take just the materials from the Boy Scouts of America, go off in the Wild West somewhere, read everything, and start your own unit. You should be able to lead a den, lead a PAC meeting with just the guides, the handbooks that they give you. And again, they have things planned out. They have, lesson plans for the den leaders. They have PAC meeting plans for the Cub Masters. But it's important that these people know where to look for the training. It's up to the PAC trainer to make sure everybody is up to date on youth protection. This should be done within the first month of becoming a leader if you're first time. It's up to the PAC trainer to make sure that we have enough BALU trained individuals, basic outdoor orienteering and whatever it stands for. But there has to be at least one BALU trained adult on every overnight camp out. So that means that if the older dens, I believe it's bears and weeblos, are the only ones allowed to camp as dens, their leaders have to be BALU trained. So it's up to the PAC trainer to make sure that that is the case. Ideally, you should have all den leaders with youth protection training, BALU training, and plans to attend University of Scouting every year. These are the ways that we make sure that our leaders have what they need to deliver the program. The Boy Scouts of America has dedicated curriculums and programs designed to deliver the program, the curriculum. We put our kids in scouting because we want them to learn specific skills, specific mindset, be part of a particular culture, and the training offered by the BSA is how we do that, and that is the PAC trainer's job to make sure that all these things are done. In the time that I have picked up many hats within our PAC, ranging between assistant cub master, advancement chair, and trainer, and currently secretary, I have always found it useful to keep digital copies of the training certificates of all of our leaders in a folder in my email, because invariably someone in an office somewhere will lose a necessary certificate, and I will end up having to try to get it from whoever took the training. So I found it best just to make sure we keep digital copies of that, also in the PAC Gmail that we set up for communications. The Cub Master, we'll get into all these roles a little bit more deeply, but the Cub Master is the face of the organization. This is the person who, at St. George, the Cub Master is allowed to go from classroom to classroom at the early part of the school year to hand out flyers and talk up the scouting program. This kind of went by the wayside during COVID, but we're trying to get that back up and going again. It is the Cub Master who runs the PAC meetings as the MC, and also coordinates with the den leaders to make sure they have everything they need, that there's no problems going on. If we have issues with a den leader having to step down, it's up to the Cub Master and the committee chair to find new leadership. So there's a lot of roles that the Cub Master holds as a unit leader. The assistant Cub Master, their job is to assist the Cub Master in all of these things. That's whenever the Cub Master is not able to do it, it is the job of the assistant Cub Master to step in. And now an interesting point here that I think should be made, especially for the leadership that follows our current generation, is that you don't need just one assistant Cub Master. In fact, it's ideal if a unit has at least 2 or 3. The troop level has several assistant scoutmasters. And the reason for this is because the unit leader may not be able to be at every single thing or every camp out or every activity, but there should be at least 2 registered leaders at every event. Of course, you want more. So having more than one assistant Cub Master means that you can divide and conquer. If you've got a committee member needs to oversee the Blue and Gold Planning Committee, well, one of the assistant Cub Masters can do that. Another committee putting together the derbies, the Pinewood Derby, the regattas, another assistant Cub Master can oversee that. So it spreads out the work a little bit. And another thing that's important to note is it's not necessary that the assistant Cub Master become the Cub Master when the current one decides to step down. Some people are only ever the assistant unit leaders. In some troop levels, there are people who have been assistant scout masters for 20 years and are happy in that role. But you do want to make sure you're grooming somebody who knows that, the plan is to hand over the reins to them. So you do want to identify your future leadership, but don't always assume that it's going to be one of the assistant Cub Masters, because we have in the past had people completely unrelated to the situation step in as Cub Master due to issues that made it, the people who could have stepped in weren't able to. So always be looking for the next generation of leaders. Now at the PAC level, when we start getting down into the dens, again, this is an older chart. We now have Lions. The kindergartners are our youngest group of scouts. So Lions, they have what are called den guides, but we still refer to them as den leaders. And the thing with the Lion level, you see here at Tiger, it says adult partners. At Lion and Tiger level, the parents are partners with the den leader, because usually the den leader is themselves just one of the parents who only just joined, and they are volunteers. So it's important that the leaders of these very young children have enough help. You don't want to just, get a group of parents together, they're all ready to put their kids in scouting, they choose one person who is going to lead everything and take all the responsibility and do all the activities. And no, not with the very young ones. You got to have parental involvement. You cannot let your parents just sit there on their phones. They're not allowed to just drop their kids off and leave them. At the older ranks, they are. but you want to make sure that you have enough help with those dens. So the lion den leader and the tiger den leader are the liaison between the den and the pack committee, but all of the parents are expected to be on board. They're supposed to be standing next to their kid, taking part in the activities. They do not need to go through leader training or youth protection, but they are treated as co-leaders with those dens, especially at lion level. Lions, you have to keep them moving. You got to keep them occupied. And for the new leaders into this program, we found, at least in our pack, that it was very helpful to, at the very beginning of the year, take all the requirements, like all the adventures for which they earn belt loops, and figure out what needs to be done for each one. Again, the handbooks tell you what needs to be done, and they actually have suggestions, they have materials lists, and then assign 2 parents to each adventure. And the idea behind that being is those 2 parents will lead the activities to complete those requirements. That keeps the den leader able to kind of just facilitate and guide and lead in that manner without putting the pressure on them to do everything. And ideally, this should also happen at the older levels as well. But the lion and tiger leaders are facilitators. The parents need to be co-leaders with the adults. Now, when you start getting into wolf, bear, and Weeblo, the Cub Scout den leaders, this is a little bit, the kids are a little bit more mature. They're maybe a little less wiggly, not much. But that's where you start getting, the den leaders and the assistant den leaders. Again, these are all people who can step in if the den leader is not able to make a meeting or if something goes on, there's traffic. Now, den chief. A den chief is an older scout who is at the troop. At the troop level, many of the requirements for those ranks, like second class and first class, star in life, specifically say that one of the requirements to get that rank is to assist a Cub Scout pack or den for 6 months. If they do that, they earn the Den Chief Award, which is another star or knot or something they can put on their uniform. But it is required for some of the ranks. So den chiefs are older scouts who come to the den meetings to help with the younger ones, and their role is to serve as an example, as someone to look up to, an example of where they can go after their Cub Scout journey, but also, to be a friend to the younger scouts and an extra pair of hands to the den leaders. The den chiefs are great for demonstrating the oath and law, telling stories about their campouts, especially if it involves something like a skunk wandering into the campsite, something interesting. Tell about the trips that they go with the troop, and just kind of get the kids excited about being in the troop in their future. But also to help pass out the snacks and help kids who are having trouble cutting a piece of paper or tying a knot or whatever it is they're doing. The one thing to remember with den chiefs, though, is you should never, ever just leave them in charge of the kids. These are not adults. They have not passed adult youth protection training. They have no training as den leaders. And they're not babysitters. They're not there to keep the kids from crawling up the wall where you go and talk to the parent. Now, it's one thing to have the den chief go outside and, maybe lead a game or something like that, but don't ever leave them in charge of the kids. There should always be an adult overseeing things, because half the time the den chiefs for the younger kids are 12, 13 years old or 14. They're still children themselves, especially if none of them have younger brothers or sisters. It's easy for them to get frustrated with the kids. There should always be some kind of oversight. Now, at the Weeblos level, just a quick word, den chiefs are an amazing help. It's not only a help to them to give them their service hours, they are a big help to the den leaders. So definitely foster relationships with the troops and make sure that they can get you some den chiefs. Now, the Weeblos den leaders, the Weeblos program is a little different than the lower ranks and the animal ranks, as I call them, because the Weeblos program is 18 months long. It's not just the scouting year that for us runs between August and May with activity, and of course we stay active during the summer. The Weeblos program is an 18-month program. And this program is where they are still Cub Scouts, but they are preparing to join a troop. So they're going to have more responsibility, and the Weeblo's den leader has some extra training that they need to do. There's extra videos to watch. And part of that involves letting the kids be more autonomous. So the Weeblo's leader usually has to learn to do that, and the same goes for the assistant Weeblo leader. Now, if you're going to have a den chief for a Weeblo's group, for a den, you want to make sure that it's maybe an older scout, somebody maybe 15 or 16 or 17, somebody who is not so close in age to these kids who are going to be 10, 11, 12 years old, that they may not take the older scouts seriously. If you've got a bunch of 11-year-olds and you've got a 13-year-old, that person's a little too close in age. You never know. You may have a very mature 13-year-old, but it's usually a little better if you get a slightly older scout. And the advantage of having a den chief from the troops these kids will be graduating into is that it's a familiar face for them when they do cross over. Because let's face it, if you're 11 years old and you're going into this troop full of guys who are 15, 16, 17, their voices have changed, they're driving, they're going to high school. That's intimidating if you're an 11-year-old kid. So it's hopeful to have a friendly face. Oh, here's a guy who's been coming to our den meetings. I know him. I'll go stand by him. True story. My own son just recently crossed over, and he was very happy to have some familiar faces in the troop that made him feel a little less self-conscious. But this is how the pack is organized. So just going over again, in Pack 136, we have a Cub Master and one Assistant Cub Master at the moment. We would definitely like to have at least one other. And then we also have Committee Chair. These are the individuals who do most of the heavy lifting. Of course, the committee with the Treasurer, Secretary, and Advancement Chair and all. We all throw our hands into the ring. But these are the ones who do most of the activity with regards to running the pack meetings and getting things set up. In general, the Cub Master is the guiding hand behind the work of the other pack leaders and is the program advisor to the pack committee. With us, this person is a recruiter, a supervisor, director, planner, motivator of the other leaders. You want to make sure that you have a Cub Master who has just enough extroversion in them to be able to motivate, but also enough introversion in them to be empathetic when the den leaders come and say, hey, I'm having issues with this. You want to make sure that you're able to help them, instead of, being maybe critical or anything like that. So you want to be a coach. You want to be a facilitator when you're a Cub Master. The Cub Master works directly with the pack trainer and the den leaders, and den chiefs, pack committee chair, committee members, to make sure all of the dens are functioning well. When I was Cub Master, I always tried to make sure that I was in regular contact with the den leaders, either through email or text, and it would just be like, hey, drop a line, hey, how's it going? So y'all had a meeting last night, how'd it go? Do you need anything? You need an extra pair of hands or whatever? Just so they know that, they can come to the committee if they need it. It's up to the Cub Master and the Assistant Cub Master to make sure that the den leaders know that we're not just throwing them out in the deep end of the pool, saying, here, make these kids Cub Scouts. We want them to know that they can come to us. It's up to this group of leaders on the committee to make sure that everybody's YPT and position trained. The Cub Master in our unit typically does a lot of the recruitment responsibilities, and that goes with, communicating with St. George School to see that, how many flyers do we need? Can we still hand out flyers from kindergarten through 5th grade to all the homerooms? Talking with Dunham, it's like, hey, can we come to your back to school night and set up a table? And then so far the response has been positive from all of those things. But it's usually the Cub Master who does that. And our Assistant Cub Master is a parent at Dunham, so he was able to facilitate some of that as well. They run the pack meetings and work with the committee. Our Cub Master is the one who usually leads the pack meetings. And depending on, the connections they have, is also the ones for coming up with activities. If we're going to have a guest speaker, they've usually handled that. If we've got some other kind of like a ceremony or something, they're the ones who usually lead the ceremony. And again, the Assistant Cub Master should assist the Cub Master in doing all these things and be willing to step in when the Cub Master is not available. And here's the advantage of having more than one Assistant Cub Master, because you may have somebody that's fairly introverted and not comfortable standing up in front of a big group of kids on a moment's notice. One of the most biggest nightmares to an introverted assistant cub master is to hear that your extroverted cub master is not coming that night because somebody's sick or there was an accident or something, and you got to take over. So you want to have somebody who can do this at a moment's notice if need be, or if you've got different dens going in one direction and another den going another direction for an activity, that you have, one cub master can go one way and an assistant can go another. The PAC committee works directly with the trainer and all the other leaders to make sure that all the dens are functioning well as well. And the PAC committee chair is appointed by the chartered organization, as I said before, to oversee the PAC committee and provide support to the den leaders. And it's the committee chair who ultimately, I think, approves the den leaders. The cub master can appoint them, the committee chair has to approve them, and all of this has to be okayed by the chartered organization. And again, as I said, key 3 to the PAC appoints adult leaders, heads PAC committee meetings. It's up to the PAC committee chair to come up with the agenda for the committee meetings to make sure that they're addressing old and new business. If there's any problem with any reservations or upcoming events, that's addressed in the committee meetings as well. So basic training, this applies to all leaders. All positions must complete their position-specific training within the first month of assuming a new role. This is a nightmare for the PAC trainer when you've got a new den leader who maybe doesn't understand the urgency of having this done. You've got to be YPT trained. You cannot lead these kids unless you have that training. It's a requirement. It's also a legal liability. We've had to, on multiple occasions, tell our new den leaders, this is not negotiable. This needs to be done, or you're not den leading. And it can be difficult to say that to somebody when nobody else stepped up as the den leader. If you're afraid that this is the only person who is ever going to lead this den, you cannot get anybody else to do it, then you gotta make sure that the parents understand that this is serious. If you've got to have at least somebody leading this den, and if you don't, then you don't have a den, or somebody else is going to have to step up. So we've never had to actually go quite that far with our dens. We have not had to tell the parents, hey, we now no longer have a bear den because we don't have a bear leader and we don't have anybody willing to step up. Usually by the time you get them past wolf level, you're going to find some who are sort of willing to step in if they really have to. And the funny thing is most of them find that they like it. But even, if you've got somebody taking over, they need to be trained in the position within the first month. If you've got somebody who did not recharter in December, then that person, whoever takes over for that person in December, has to be YPT trained and position trained by the end of January. All training is available at my.scouting.org. They will have to create a username and password. They should use the email address that they used when they filled out the adult application. And once they have that, they will have access to Scoutbook as an administrator where they can record advancements for the kids in their den. The login for that is the same that you will use to log into Scoutbook. You should create the my.scouting.org login first and give it about a day or about 24 hours to cycle through before you should be able to log into Scoutbook. The leaders of the PAC committee and the den leaders should plan to attend district roundtables at least a couple times a year. Here in East Baton Rouge Parish, we call our University of Scouting PSACHI. Apparently it's a Native American term that means education or something like that. But all leaders should plan to attend University of Scouting, as well as Baloo and Wood Badge if able to. Now, this has been a little bit of a struggle with the St. George units because, again, the den leaders have kind of adopted the idea of, oh, I'm just here to make sure we have a den and that the kids do the activities. They don't always appreciate the importance of in-person training. But I have found personally that when I've gone to University of Scouting or Baloo or Wood Badge, that not only the relationships that you form with other scouters in your area, but you get to put faces to names of some of the emails you send back and forth with the council, and you get to forge some connections. Like at our last University of Scouting, our Cub Master had some great conversations with our district leader, with another leader who was informed about the water sports safety, which was a thing with our PAC wanting to use canoes. So being able to have those in-person, face-to-face conversations, which is so much better than email and so much more time efficient. But you also pick up some tips and tricks from your fellow scouters. When you attend University of Scouting, when you attend these trainings, then you also have the benefit of picking up what other people have learned from their experience. So say you have somebody who is having trouble with a particular activity with their bears, or teaching the whittling chip. Well, there's entire classes at University of Scouting on how to teach the whittling chip. Baloo training is outdoor overnight training for leaders. All den leaders should have this training, and it's only offered once a year by a Struma council. Somebody who decides they may want to do this after a Struma has already had it finds themselves, driving out to Calcasieu or Evangeline. But these in-person trainings are very valuable, and I've never regretted any of the ones I've gone to. But getting the new leaders to go to them requires a good deal of convincing. We've even offered to pay their fees, even though it's like only $15, $25. It's not cost prohibitive, but getting them at these trainings is a bit like pulling teeth. But the funny thing is, once they go there, they usually have a pretty good time, and they make some new friends, and it's not hard to get them to go to the other stuff afterwards. But get them to University of Scouting first. If you can't get them to Baloo or Wood Badge, at least get them to a one-day, out at either, high school, or our last one was at LSU, where they go to a couple of classes and learn some stuff and meet some people. Again, youth protection is mandatory for all adult volunteers. And St. George leaders for the units at St. George must also complete diocesan training. Because we are chartered by a Catholic church, we have to pass the youth protection program issued by the Baton Rouge Diocese. That is also non-negotiable. Now, most of us who have children in Catholic schools had to take this training just to go on the field trips and stuff with our kids. But, with our parents who come in from the public schools and from the other schools, in addition to the BSA training, you also have to do the church training. And the church training is every 2 years, and BSA training is every 3 years. And as I just said, BSA must be renewed every 3 years, diocesan training every 2 years. Any leaders who do not have current youth protection at recharter in December will not be rechartered as leaders. This is not negotiable. There is no extra time. It's understood that by the time we recharter in December, you've had several months to do this. It should be the first thing you do. Youth protection is also mandatory for the scouts themselves and their families. It's a slightly different program than the leaders take, but any scout who has not completed youth protection will not receive rank, even if they do every other requirement. And we've actually had that happen. We've had some come down to literally the night before the award ceremony, where they've done all the activities, they've done a couple of electives, they've done everything except youth protection. And I've sent several emails to the parents. Hey, did y'all watch the 3 videos that you have to watch? That's it. Just watch the videos and tell me yes, you did it. For some reason, this was a hardship. But I ended up calling one family and say, are y'all coming to the award ceremony tomorrow? Yes. He will not receive his rank unless you tell me he's done youth protection. Oh, well, we thought that was optional. No, you didn't, because I've said it several times. I've made announcements at PAC meetings. I put it in the newsletter that we sent out. I sent out reminder emails. It is not optional. It doesn't matter what they've done. It doesn't matter if they've received the Presidential Medal of Freedom. They have to have youth protection, or they do not rank. This is for the protection of the children involved. It's also protection of adults who act in the capacity of leader. Who, this protects everybody. So just do it. It'll take you an hour. So how to plan the yearly calendar. So we plan the yearly calendar with PAC 136 either in June or July. We typically, want to get this done before we start the scouting year, and we plan through the rest of through the following May. In some cases, we've made efforts to try to plan 3 years out in advance so that we don't repeat too often the same activities for the kids who have been there for a couple of years. Sometimes that's worked out. More often that we found that, the halfway between the second year, we usually have to make enough changes to where it warranted another meeting. But if you're going to have a planning meeting for your unit, and this applies to troops as well, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have all the relevant calendars that could affect the PAC. Most of our children, about 2/3 of the scouts, go to St. George School, but we also have kids going to Dunham, Flame, Basis. So you want to have the calendars for all of those schools. You want to know when their schools start. You want to know when their, spring breaks are. Make sure that you have these things before you go into the yearly calendar. You want to have the Estruma Council calendar. The district itself does several events like Cub Scout Family Camp, the Cub Scout Day Camp, shooting sports. They do a lot of things that anyone in any PAC or troop can go to. And you want to, have as much of that information, in the coming months as possible. We only recently, you think we would have done this before, but we only recently started really looking at the LSU football calendar. We had a bad habit of planning our fall campouts the weekend of the Alabama game or some other major football game. You want to try to not do that because it does affect your membership. Some areas of the country might find that incredible. What do you mean you give up scouts to go to a football game? Yeah, down here we do. So you want to try your best to schedule any overnight campouts or major events on a weekend where people are not going to be tailgating and watching the game. And you also kind of want to schedule those when they're on away games, when they're not home, because the traffic around Baton Rouge becomes an issue when there's a home LSU game. You also want to have the other nearby council calendars, like Evangeline and Calcasieu and all the others, because they also have stuff going on. If you miss Ballou training or University of Scouting this year with Estruma, you may be able to go to Evangeline. And you also want to know some local community events. The libraries can help you with these, but there's also several festivals, Earth Day festivals, farmer markets, things like that you can take the kids to. You want to create a monthly calendar between the planning meeting all the way through May, with at least one PAC meeting a month and one PAC activity a month, like a hike or the USS Kid, spending the night on the ship, a camp out, rock climbing. In August, we usually do a big water party as a welcome back to the PAC thing. You want all that on the calendar. And you want all of that added to the PAC's Google Calendar as soon as possible, because the Google Calendar is what shows up on the website, and that's the one we typically refer all the parents to. So you want to make sure that the calendars on Google and Scoutbook reflect all of what was decided at the planning meeting. They can be changed, if there's a cancellation or a date change, you can do that later, but go ahead and get them in the calendar. You should, if there's going to be summer events, because our PAC likes to stay active during the summer so that the kids have the opportunity to earn the Summertime Activity Award. We try to plan at least 2 PAC events during the summer months, but we don't have PAC meetings and we don't have DEN meetings during the summer. So we make it up with maybe, 2 activities a month. So if a kid misses one, he has the opportunity to attend the second one. And we've done hikes, we've done, bike rides on the levee. We've done a whole bunch of other, things just to get the kids active and stay, relevant with scouting so we don't lose them for 3 months. And then, August runs around and the kid's like, oh, well, I don't remember how much fun Scout is. I don't think I want to be in it. It's really helped our retention rate to stay active through the summer. But any summer events, it should be finalized at this time. Summer events should really be planned out in March, if possible, because some of them might require reservations. I think in one case we went to a wildlife preserve kind of out in Clinton, Louisiana, where they had like a llama and a sloth and and that required some planning. You should include PAC meetings, obviously, in your calendar. Service projects. We went to the food bank one year. Any excursions, guest speakers, special events, and any PAC goals that we may have. Like if you want to set a popcorn sale goal, this is a good time to do it. We have special events throughout the year that are kind of independent of just PAC excursions. We do the Pinewood Derby, the Rain Gutter Regatta, blue and gold banquet, and our Arrow of Light crossover ceremony tends to be a little bit more involved than some other packs do. We want to make it special for those kids. You want to form committees of parents and one committee member to plan and orchestrate these events. The Pinewood Derby should have a committee in place by November, because sometimes it requires that amount of planning if we want to do things like activity tables or a concession stand or something like that. The Rain Gutter Regatta should be planned out with veteran parents sometime in the summer. And I say veteran parents because we usually hold ours in September, only a few weeks after we start the scouting year, and newbie parents might be a little mystified as to how we run those. The veteran parents have been around, at least would have taken place in at least one the year before. The Blue and Gold Decorating and Activity Committee should be formed also in October or November because it takes a while to plan that out. Our blue and gold banquets have in the past been mostly potluck, but they've been themed before. You know, you can do a carnival one. We did a Star Wars one year. More recently, because we haven't had any committees formed to run these things, our blue and gold have been very low key the last couple years, and COVID had a lot to do with that. More recently, we've just handed out cupcakes to the kids and had a magician come and perform, but it may be in the future we want to go back to doing a more involved event. If we do, there should be a committee formed no later than November to put that event on. And you also want to make sure you secure either the cafeteria or the Klein Peter Activity Center at St. George to hold all that. You want to try and get chaperones for Cub Scout Day Camp. Cub Scouts cannot camp without adults present, and they don't camp overnight, so you need to get parents or leaders on board with going down to day camp with the kids in the summer, which is going to require somebody to take off from work. So you want to put that out there at least in March, you know, so people can start thinking about it. Always involve the parents of the Arrow of Light Scouts in the planning and Arrow of Light crossover, because this is a big event for them and their children. So you want to make sure you have input from them, have them put it on, have them come up with the decorations. The pack owns a bridge and owns a candelabra with battery-powered candles and a bunch of decorations, tiki torches and stuff. But the parents may have a specific theme in mind that they want to do. So involve them in that as well. Other events for Pack 136 have included, obviously, campouts. We spend the night on the USS Kidd, a destroyer that is in permanent dry dock in Baton Rouge, is a museum. You can spend the night in the crew quarters. That's always been fun. We do a cake bake contest in October, which is the same weekend that St. George holds its parish fair. The cake bake contest, which is done with parent and child, the cakes are then donated to the fair's cakewalk. Scout Sunday is held in February, usually the first or second weekend. And then we have the Scouts pursue optional awards independent of their rank awards, such as religious emblems. We are chartered by a Catholic church, so we encourage the Catholic kids to go after the Catholic religious emblem, as well as some of the other people of other faiths that we have in the pack to pursue theirs as well. But for that, we need a religious emblem coordinator who receives training from the diocese on how to implement the religious emblem program. Presently, we don't have one. That is a little bit more of a commitment now than it has been in the past, but you want to try to get somebody who can serve in that capacity. Emergency preparedness, the Summertime Activity Award, Outdoor Activity Award, usually earned at day camp or in the summer. The STEM Awards with Nova and Supernova, and the Messenger of Peace Service Awards. These are all things that the Scouts can pursue, and the pack leadership should encourage these, especially the Messenger of Peace Awards for maybe the Lions, because they actually do not earn the Religious Emblem Awards. You start earning that at Tiger. So if you're looking for something a little extra like that for the Lions to do, the Messenger of Peace Awards is a good one. There's also the district camps, and again, the attendees must be accompanied by an adult. So rechartering. In Estrema Council, which is District 211, we began planning for recharter in, that should actually be November, but it must be done by December 12th. And what that means for the committee is that you have to start getting kind of an idea from the parents if they are going to be returning for the coming calendar year. Recharter, even though scouting activity year runs between August and May, recharter year, which is going to be a little confusing, runs between January and December. So when we recharter, we do it for the January through December calendar year. Even if the kids drop out of scouting, in May, they are still rechartered through the rest of the year. And they will show up on our roster until we recharter again or until we actively remove them. What this means for the pack is that in the past it's caused a little bit of confusion for the new scouts. When they join in August, in the past what we used to do is charge them for August through December and then the coming calendar year. So they would end up paying like maybe somewhere around $200 for, the new scout fees, the recharter fees and everything like that for basically a year and a half. But what was happening is we had a lot of people not commit to that because if they're brand new to scouting, they don't know if they're going to like it. They don't know if they're going to stay after recharter. So what we started doing is we came up with a schedule of payments. If a kid joins in August, it's this much. If they join in September, it's a little bit less. October, it's a little bit less. We charge the new scouts August through December for the rest of that year. We only add them. We only have them pay the amount of money it would take to stay in scouts through the next recharter, which is in December. That way they would just recharter with everyone. So that means telling the new families when they join in August and September, this is basically your joining fee, this is your tryout fee, and then in December, if you're going to stay with us, this is how much everybody pays. So you would have to pay again. It's a little rough asking people for a second payment that close to Christmas. But honestly, we found it so far it has not been prohibitive, and we did have quite a few people decide to stay. We had quite a few decide to leave, but this does seem to work out a little bit better for our new families. You want the rest of the pack to start thinking about who's coming back in November. They should know by November if they're going to continue scouting through the next calendar year. And what we've done is we set up a Google form with the roster of the pack, and we had people click a checkbox, yes or no, to returning. Just so that we could kind of get a head count. You pay during recharter, the amount that you pay is based on how many people will be in your unit for the coming calendar year. So that is what we pay, usually out of popcorn proceeds. So if we have somebody who doesn't know if they're coming back or not, we still end up paying for that scout, and then they decide to drop out in January where we're out that fee. So you want to try to get a yes or no answer from everybody in the pack by the end of November. Are you coming back or not? And then you do the rechartering process. This must be completed by December 12th. It is currently done online at myscouting.org, and it's usually, so far our committee chairman has been doing this, but it should ideally be a key 3 person. Rechartering is your unit's contract with the BSA to allow your unit to continue to exist for the coming calendar year. And thankfully, these 2 links below are links with YouTube tutorials on how to do it. It's a whole lot easier these days than it has been in the past. In previous years, the Estruma Council has partnered with the main library at Goodwood to use the technology lab, where they had representatives from the council in the lab with open computers where people could come in and do the rechartering process with a council representative there to help them if they needed it. They did not do that last year, but I'm hoping they do it again this coming year because it's quite helpful. So the Rain Gutter Regatta and the Pinewood Derby. We hold the Rain Gutter Regatta in the end of September. It serves as kind of our first big Yahoo bash for the new scouts. And we hold our Pinewood Derby in March. We usually like to try to do it earlier than April because it allows our winners to know who's going to the district Pinewood Derby, which is usually held in April. So we had inflatable, water tracks like this. I believe they're still actually in the closet, but they tend to spring leaks, and they're a real pain in the butt to handle. So one of our Arrow of Light dads, Tim Poray, actually made some actual rain gutter tracks that are this length and about that wide, and they are currently stored in the Cub Scout supply closet at the Scout House up on the top shelf. They have frames that hold them into place, but the pack needs to provide sawhorses to hold them up. So we need at least 4 sawhorses, and we should probably just go ahead and buy some. But at the moment, we've been relying on parents to bring some. We no longer blow at the boats. This is another after effect of COVID, but also because the younger scouts, the short ones, have a real hard time leaning over into the water and blowing efficiently. So we found it was more fair and probably a little healthier to use hand fans. They blow at the same rate, and even the short ones can reach up over the edge and hold the fan in front of their boat and get it to go. But another thing about that is that it also it kind of evens the score a little bit. You may have a kid that's really good at blowing. So we found that to be a little bit more efficient. You want to get the parents, the ones with smartphones that have stopwatches on them, to kind of judge the lanes and things like that. But you also want to make sure that you have at least 4 or 5 people running this thing. You want people watching the lanes to make sure that nobody's touching the boats while they're getting them down the lane. You also need somebody checking everybody in. You want to assign each boat a number, just like the Pinewood Derby. All of this is outlined in the PAC operations manual, which tells how to run these derbies and how to go about the most efficient means of doing these things. But you want a well-run rain gutter regatta because that gives the new parents an indication that the PAC itself is well-run. The Pinewood Derby is our biggest event. Some people get quite competitive with this. And, we have a track that comes apart and is stored in a custom-made case in the St. George gym. It's in the closet, and that's typically where we like to try and hold our Pinewood Derbies. We have in the past rolled that monstrosity. It rolls. The case rolls out to the cafeteria, but it's very rickety and looking to come apart in any second. So we really don't like to do that. You need at least 4 or 5 people to put that track together. The timers are held in a case at the Scout House, as well as the weights and the car measuring box to make sure everything is uniform. You want a derby coordinator on the committee to run all this because it does require a lot of planning. We used to do a space derby in the summer. It would be nice if we could do that again, but this is just the 2 that we do is a lot of work. In July, the derby coordinator should secure a location for the rain gutter regatta. In the past, we've held it on the wooden deck of the playground at St. George School, right next to the St. Luke Center, the cafeteria. You want to get an RSVP from at least 3 veteran parents to help run this, to check in the boats and assign numbers and make sure it's all tracked in the spreadsheet that's on the Google Drive. By September, we hold the regatta usually on the last weekend of the month or thereabouts. Now in October, you want to confirm with St. George School on the date to use the gym for the Pinewood Derby. And the reason for this is we usually hold our derbies right about the time basketball is real big at St. George. And getting the gym on a particular weekend has been problematic in the past. So you want to confirm that date as soon as possible. And again, the track is in the gym closet. You're going to need a couple of adults to put that together. The instructions are in the blue chest with the timers that are in the bathroom of the Scout House. And also at the Scout House are the concrete buckets. These are concrete-filled buckets with poles sticking out of them. We use those to run decorations or ropes around the track to keep the kids from, running over the track or jumping over the track. You want to put some kind of barrier around it to keep the kids off of it. In January of the scouting year, you want to secure commitments from at least 10 parents to help run the derby, including track setup the night before, car check-in and weigh-in in the lobby of the gym, scorekeepers, the track pit crew, that's the adults who get the cars off the track and put them back at the starting or, take note of position, and others to run the activity table. We've done coloring, face painting, carnival games to keep the other kids occupied while running the races. Try to contact the troops to see if anybody wants to help with these things. In the past, we've had Troop 1136 come help with check-in. They were very helpful. It's also been suggested that the troops run a concession stand as a fundraiser for themselves. Make announcement at PAC meetings to get volunteers. And it also helps if you approach parents that you know want to help but maybe don't want to be den leaders. If you've got a parent who he and their they're and the kids are there at every single event, they always come up, oh, did you need help with something? Tell them, yeah, I would like you to know how to put the track together so that when we move on as leaders, we will leave somebody behind who knows how to handle the track. It usually makes them feel pretty good to be approached personally and asked to do it. February, you want to get with the church office to use the Scout House for our car building day. We've had Pinewood Derby car building day usually the first weekend in March. And that is where we have anyone with power tools, scroll saws, sanders, things like that. We all get together one afternoon, and everybody who needs help builds their cars. This is great for the new families who don't really have any experience building a good Pinewood Derby car. And the veteran families can help them with that. The wedge shape is one of the best. You want to put a lot of graphite on those wheels. It definitely is helpful to have people helping the new families build their cars for the first time. And if a couple of the dads have scroll saws, that saves so much time cutting out those blocks. And the Derby is usually held in the later half of the month of March. Blue and Gold Banquet. This is a long-standing Cub Scout tradition that celebrates the birth of Scouting and the founder, Robert Baden-Powell. We have a lot of different ways to hold it. We've held potlucks before. Some packs have full catered meals, and some others have just had snacks. The past couple of years, we just had snacks. But it should include food and entertainment. It should include some kind of history of scouting so that the Cub Scouts know where they're coming from. They belong to a tradition. They're not just isolated in their pack. They belong to an entire world of tradition and a whole culture that passes on a value set. And all of this has been in operation for over 100 years. So some history of scouting is cool. Skits. We've had a skit on the history of scouting put on by our two Weeblos dens. We've just played a 3-minute YouTube video in the past on the history of scouting. Any of those work. You want to select a theme and plan activities and games around that theme. In the past, we've had Star Wars. We've done video games. Some packs have done outdoor survival where they have to, do some kind of demonstration of a survival skill. They set up fake campsites and, had campfire meals and foil packets and stuff as the meal. Our Star Wars one was pretty entertaining. We had the dens decorate their tables. We had it in the school cafeteria. We had them decorate in Star Wars themes. The kids came dressed as Jedis. We used pool noodles to make lightsabers. We had, pin the ears on Yoda. And we actually had a silent auction of several, Star Wars characters that I crocheted out of yarn. And we did that as a silent auction as a fundraiser for the pack. I made 5 baby Yodas, and they all sold for no less than $30. So that was a fun time. Sometimes we invite the troops. If you invite the troop, have them have a court of honor so the Cubs can witness that. If you don't know what a court of honor is, this is held every couple of months where a scout at the troop who has earned a new rank or has earned some merit badges is awarded those things at the court of honor. It's usually, a pretty cool thing to witness, and it's a good thing for the Cub Scouts to see how things are done at the troop. This would be a good time to hand out special awards. If anybody earned the Messenger of Peace or the Religious Emblem Awards, you can hand them out then. And this is also a time where you want to recognize the adults. Because again, we're all volunteers, and these den leaders have taken time out to get trained and to lead these meetings, and you want to recognize them in some way. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. We've done certificates, we've done goofy awards, like we've handed out to one particularly handy dad the screwdriver award and stuff like that. But you can also get things on Etsy. Some people make things specifically for scout leaders that are really kind of cute and unique. And just do a search on Etsy for homemade wood carved keychains or something. Just give them some kind of recognition to show that you appreciate their work. You should if we are chartered by St. George Church, so we should invite the clergy to this. Have a special guest performer. We've had a magician. Some do musicians. One of the dads played bagpipes one year, I understand. You want to try to hold to a time limit, especially if you've got lions and tigers. The little ones don't really need to be up, you don't need to be there past 8. If you start, like at 5 or something like that, you'll usually be done by 7:30 at the latest. You want skits and sing some traditional scout songs, scout vespers, and some of the camp songs. Get the kids to know some of these things. These are traditional things. These are the things their fathers sang when they were in scouts, and their mothers who were in Girl Scouts. A lot of the songs are the same. This is part of the things we want to teach them. These are the things that we want them to remember when they're grown. Hold it in a park if you're doing a picnic, or in a church activity center building. We've used the KAC as well as the school cafeteria. And again, you want to include some history of scouting aspects. And if you're inviting the troop, have them maybe do a skit on the history of scouting. Popcorn and fundraising. The Girl Scouts have their cookies. Cub Scouts and Troop Scouts have their popcorn. Popcorn sales done well can generate enough income to financially support your scouting program for the entire year. Money from popcorn can be used to cover the cost of camporees, Pinewood derbies, field trips, or other expenses that we've used, badges and advancement materials, things like that. And for some, summer camp. If you've got families having financial hardships, money out of the PAC coffers can help fund some of that. It's typically done in the fall and is headed by the popcorn kernel and fundraising chair. And this has always been a little problematic for me, because if you've got people just joining Scouts and the first thing you make them do is fundraising, that's a little uncouth. But the thing is, the Girl Scouts do their cookie sales in the spring, and let's be honest, we can't compete with that. The Girl Scouts are, the rulers of scouting fundraisers. So we need to do that at a time they're not doing theirs, and that, unfortunately for us, that's the fall. But the popcorn kernel is responsible for attending the district events. They have orientation for popcorn kernels sometime in August or September. They accept the popcorn earners from the unit. They distribute the prizes. They lead any other fundraisers like show and sell outside of grocery stores, things like that. There's other ways to earn money, not just with popcorn. We've done country meat sticks. Some have done World's Finest Chocolate. Camp cards, which are usually sold by the troops, but we've made a go at it at the PAC, which are like cards with coupons programmed into them, like car washes and things like that. Garage sales, car washes, used book sales. As a librarian, I can speak from experience. A used book sale is incredibly profitable. Do a book drive, put some boxes in the back of the church where people can donate books, and then sell them, under a couple of pop-up tents on a Saturday. People will definitely come and get their used books, at least in this area. And these are just some of the things that some scouting units have done. These are some examples of fundraisers. Now, what I really like in the top left corner are the first aid kits. There are actual companies where you can do a fundraiser selling first aid kits. And this is kind of becoming a thing now. Some scouting units, usually troops, but some PACs can do this, sign up with this company and who provides like a car first aid kits or at-home first aid kits, and they sell them for, $15, $20, up to $30, and they keep about half of the proceeds. It's not a bad way to garner some revenue. World's Finest Chocolate, everybody's got that coworker who brings the chocolate to the office, but it goes because people love it. Car washes in the summer. We did the country meats, where you buy them for 50 cents per stick and you sell them for $1.50 each. Those go pretty well. The one time I actually did this at my work to test out the viability of it, I sold just by myself, about $55 worth of meat sticks. The camp cards, that's an example down there on the left. Several different coupons on that card. Some of the parts of the card break off when you use the coupon, but they usually sell anywhere from $5 to $10, and the scouting unit keeps about half of that. The youth book sale, of course, popcorn in the bottom left, and the garage sale. What our troops do is a Christmas wreath sale, and apparently that garners a lot of revenue as well in the holiday season. So these are all some good fundraising ideas. Camping and activities. Well, that's why we put our kids in scouting. We figured at some point we're going to go camping. Getting their kids and their families outdoors is a great way to bond and unplug from technology overload and to learn some useful skills. The few times we've been on campouts with the Cubs, it's a very rare occasion where we find them on a phone. Once you get them away from the technology, they will make up their own games. And it's good for them. It's good for them to unplug, and it's good for the parents also to get away from the screens and away from the ringing phones and just chat with the other parents sitting around a campfire. Any overnight events require every participant to submit an A and B medical form, and Form C if you're going to be longer than 72 hours. All forms should be kept in the PAC blue binder for immediate access, which is kept by either the secretary or the Cub master, should they need to be given to medical personnel. And that has actually happened, not to us, but to some of our units in our area. Everyone who is on this campout needs to have an AB form done. That goes for mom, dad, little brother, the scout, grandpa who comes up for just the day. Everybody needs an AB form because they have had a situation up at Camp Avondale where somebody had a heart attack and they had to call EMS to come out. And they just went to their binder, pulled the guy's AB form, handed it to the paramedics, and they knew exactly what to do with them. They knew what his medical history was, what medications he was on. That's why you have it for everyone who participates. We typically keep them through the year in the blue binder, and then we shred them at the end of the scouting year. And the reason for that is because people's medical history changes. You don't want all that personal information floating around. We do try to keep it in the blue binder with just 1 or 2 committee members. But it's also for their peace of mind to know that we're getting rid of that information and not keeping it. On the campouts, you should maintain 2 deep leadership at all times. There should always be at least 2 adults with a group of children. You want 5 children per 1 adult is the ratio that's best. At district events, leaders must accompany any attending scouts. Day camps, overnight camps, camporees, they need to have an adult from their unit with them. During the planning sessions in the summer, once you've identified what dates you want to camp out, you should book the campsite as soon as you know the dates. The PAC can pay the fees for Avondale for everyone, but it might be worth taking up a collection from the families for any food or PAC cookouts. In the past, PAC 136, we have a family who is currently at Weeblo 1 level who do a lot of tailgating at the LSU games. So they have this whole tailgating setup, and they have very generously offered to cook for the entire PAC. They've made pastelaya, pasta, white beans and rice, easy to make staples that feed a lot of people, and they fed upward of 200 people with that rig. Well, of course we're going to pay for the food. We're not going to make these folks pay, not even for their propane. You know, they're putting a whole lot of effort into cooking for us, so we definitely want to take up a collection to pay them back for that. Otherwise, the dens are usually responsible for breakfast and lunch on Saturday, and then the PAC will do a cookout that night and usually breakfast the next morning. So Class B uniforms, most of us know that Class A are the familiar uniforms that the Scouts wear, the blue ones for the Cub Scouts and the tan ones for the older Scouts. Those are worn at formal events. But for things like campouts or, excursions, bike rides on the levee stuff, we usually wear our Class B shirts. And they're available for order from Central Cross Threads at least twice a year. This is the link that we've used. For the new families coming on, if they want one of the shirts, they can go to this website and order it. We also try to order some in advance to where we have them at recruitment night for people who sign up. And later on in the first month of scouting, if they want one of the t-shirts, we try to have a supply on hand. But, this is how we've done that. The PAC wants to have a standing relationship with a t-shirt printer who can print our logo on these t-shirts. So the summertime, a lot of units go inactive during the summer, but studies have shown that it's beneficial to maintain some activity during these months so the kids don't get bored or disconnected from scouting. Keeping active with scouting through the summer is great for retention rates. So, we want our committee to make sure to plan out plenty of summertime activities for PAC 136. Den and PAC meetings usually cease during the summer, but the PAC can still hold events. As I said earlier, we try to hold 2 events a month, and it gives the Scouts an option to earn the Summertime Activity Award. We've tried to plan summertime campouts. The problem with that is it usually conflicts with vacations, people going on vacations, or summer camps that the district is doing. So Camp Avondale is usually in use during the summer. But we've done things like bounced around ideas about going to Jellystone Campout or one of the state parks or something like that. It's never completely come together, but it's something to consider in the future. We used to hold the Space Derby, the Rocket Derby, but because the manufacturers stopped making the kits, they're kind of hard to find. So it might be worth having a recycle Rocket Derby in the summer, where the kids make rockets from recycled materials. And the way those work is you run a line as the racetrack. It's like a clothesline between 2 points, and the rockets are propelled with rubber band powered propellers. So that's kind of cool. We haven't done that in a while. I think the last Space Derby was held the year before my son joined at a Tiger, and he recently graduated to the troop. So it's been a while. But it might be something to do in the future. Or in the past, we've also done Estes rocket launches, where we've gotten kits where the kids build their own rockets, and we launch them at a rec park. So there's a lot of cool things you can do like that. Roundup season between August and September. This is the point where the Cub Master or somebody from the PAC committee calls the schools to confirm that it's okay to send the recruitment flyers to their students. This has to come out of the PAC budget, or if we've got, we've had people like myself who work in offices where we have access to computers and printers. But it's a lot to print. In going to the FedEx stores and stuff like that, it's going to cost about $200 to print about 1,000 flyers. And St. George alone has 30 kids in 4 classes at each grade level, and if we're going between kindergarten and 5th grade, that's a lot of flyers just for St. George. And then we also, of course, send some to Dunham. And the thing with Dunham is we have to remind them that the girls get these flyers as well. We've had issues with them in the past, only giving them to the boys. And then, the district has said they wanted us to reach out to some of the public schools like Basis, Westminster. So it's up to the Cub Masters and assistant Cub Masters to see if we can send those materials, if we can visit the classrooms. We can reuse the same flyer, but on the back of the flyer, the front of the flyer has pictures of the activities that we've done and, the contact information for the PAC. And on the back, we have a list of the current year's upcoming activities that was decided at the planning meeting, so that people can kind of see what we've got planned and what's coming up, and helps them to decide if they want to join. You want to plan a recruitment event. We've had water parties where we rented an inflatable water slide and had ice cream. Have maybe a demonstration evening where we set up a fake campsite and demonstrate scouting skills like fire making or lashing things together, stuff like that. And we want to make sure that we secure the facilities and permission to do them. With PAC 136, we've also had a table set up at St. George's Back to School Night, which is they usually have like a snow cone food trucks and stuff, and that's when they put the classroom lists up on the window so the kids can see what class they're in and who their teacher is. So it's a big event at St. George, their Back to School Night, as well as Dunham. So we want to make sure we have a table with our trifold board that has all the pictures on it, and flyers to hand out. We've done signs in the carpool line, join scouting, put our website and our email address on them. We visit the classrooms or make announcements after school mass at St. George. And we've made use of promotional videos on our PAC Gmail's YouTube channel that we then share on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, things like that. Committee meetings we try to hold monthly in the first week of the month. It should be done before the PAC meeting. The DEN meetings are held on the second and third weeks of the month, and the PAC meetings on the last week of the month. So the way scouting is usually arranged for other units, you have the DENs meeting the first 3 weeks of the month and then a PAC meeting on the last week. PAC 136 in the past has done that a little reversed, where we've had the committee meetings, the PAC meeting early in the month, and the DEN meetings in the later half of the month. But just whatever works for everybody. Each committee meeting should have an agenda and should not last longer than 90 minutes at most. 60 minutes or less is better. They've gone a little long when we started, chit-chatting. We've more recently started holding them over Zoom because it's just more convenient for everybody, especially if you're doing the single parent thing because somebody's out of town and you've got kids. So Zoom has been a lot easier for us, but we have in the past also been in person. We want to make sure we address the current issues with the PAC, what resources we need to address the issues, who can help with this, and to assign duties to get things done. We want to check on old business, previous assignments and duties, and there should always be a treasurer's report at all of these things. And in the past, we've had a hard time scheduling them because they always seem to fall on district roundtable night. Now we've taken to holding Zoom meetings on Sunday nights just to have those nights free. So PAC communications, this is usually facilitated by the secretary. We make use of GroupMe, mostly because, again, 2/3 of our cubs are at St. George, and this is the preferred method of communication for the different classes with the class moms and the teachers. I mean, obviously they do use email for official stuff, but general chit-chat usually happens on the GroupMe app. So quite a few of the St. George families already had GroupMe. So that's what the PAC started using for quick communications. In addition to that, we use formal email. The PAC has a Gmail account. We make use of Scoutbook, Google Calendars. We have a Facebook page and a website in which we put information, especially for new families. The email address specifically from the PAC is best because we've had issues in the past with, Cub Masters using their own email to address the PAC. And, when they move on, well, everybody's still asking questions to that email. All communications to parents in an official capacity come from this email. And we just hand over control of the email when one person steps down, another takes over. We also make a monthly newsletter of upcoming local and PAC events, reminders, tidbits of information, and pictures of past events. We do that monthly. There's a list of upcoming dates in the newsletter. There's reminders for the parents. There's links to things that we talk about. We email that out near the beginning of the month, and we also print out a couple of copies to hand out at the PAC meetings for those who didn't get the email. We keep the website and calendar up to date regularly. Any changes to events or meetings are altered in the main Google Calendar. We do have Scoutbook for that, but we don't treat it as our master. The Gmail calendar for the PAC Gmail is our master because it shows it's the one that we have embedded in our website. Advancement. This is tracked by the DEN leaders who keep track of what the scouts in their DENs are earning, and they convey that to the advancement chair. The advancement chair then logs them in Scoutbook. We found that it's best to have as few fingers as possible on Scoutbook. The DEN leaders are responsible for keeping the advancement chair up to date on what everybody has earned. We recognize the scouts who have earned their adventure requirements by reading out their names at PAC meetings, and the children stand up as their name is called. Everybody claps for them, and at that time the DEN leaders distribute the belt loops that they have earned for those adventures. The advancement chair enters the requirements earned in the Scoutbook, advances the DENs, and adds scouts to DENs when they join. They approve all earned requirements and awards. So the DEN leaders should maintain regular communication with the advancement chair. And it's important to remember that the advancement curriculum for each rank is how the BSA administers its values and skills to scouts. We must follow the curriculum, otherwise what we're doing is not scouting. It might be fun, but it's not scouting. And thankfully they have a whole bunch of material, DEN leaders guides, Cub Masters guides, videos, in-person training that show you how to do this. And if you implement the curriculum properly, you're not ever going to be at a loss for anything to do at DEN meetings or PAC meetings, because there is so much that can be done to advance that curriculum that you're going to find you don't have enough time. But it's the advancement chair who enters all of these completed requirements in the Scout Book and maintains a paper copy. And the reason for this is because Scout Book has been known to glitch. In the advancement chair training that I have made for Scout Book that goes into further detail with this, but the times that I've spent as advancement chair, I always kept a paper copy, which is usually a single sheet for each den. That's a list of names on that sheet of paper, and then I just check off next to each requirement for next to each name when they've completed it, so I can see who's done what. The den leaders should regularly communicate with the advancement chair, and the PAC secretary should also keep a copy of the paper copy of this for PAC records. You want to make it fun, strike a balance between traditional activities and more modern activities. There's a lot to be said for tradition, but some of it can be a little old and fogey, and there's newer stuff that can be done that incorporates the same thing. But you also don't want to do so much extra stuff that you forget about the traditional activities. If your scouts are graduating from the troop to the PAC, to the PAC to the troop, and they don't know some of the basic songs or the history of scouting or some of the lore, well, you've done too much extra stuff. Scouting is just as much a culture as it is an activity club. You're imparting values through songs, through skits, through stories. And the Scouts are the recipients of a decades-old community that imparts specific values, skills, and lore to teach important concepts. But you can do this through games. You can do it through songs. You can do it through, at this point, YouTube videos. There's a ton of YouTube videos out there that tell scouting stories. And if you're not a good singer, play scouting songs on YouTube. Send out parent survey. Consider planning it out 3 years in advance to avoid repeating activities too often. As I said earlier, that sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. But you want to make sure you send out parent surveys at the end of the year, usually in May, at the last PAC meeting, to get parent input. What worked this year? What didn't? What do the parents want to see more of? What do they want to see less of? What form of communication did they find most useful? Make sure you get those surveys from the parents to guide you in the coming year, and these should be tabulated at the next planning meeting, at the summertime planning meeting for the coming year. So that is how PAC 136 runs its PAC. As you can see, very much in accordance with what the BSA has put out. Some roles and responsibilities sometimes change over the years, and in a lot of cases we've had different committee members taking up certain roles based on who was available to do it at the time. But don't try to do it all yourself, especially if you're the cub master or assistant cub master. Get help, get people, delegate duties, and learn to trust people to do those duties. And make sure that the den leaders and everyone involved know how much they're appreciated, because we're all part of this. It takes everybody, it takes the village to raise the kids. And if we do it right, then they will remember this even when they're grown, and maybe even become scout leaders themselves when their own children come of age to join scouting. So thanks for all you do, and I hope that this video has been useful to the leaders of the future of PAC 136, and we'll see you out there in scouting land.